Hey guys, welcome back to Rose's Randoms. It's been a while, but I'm here to talk about the movie Drop. It just came out in theaters, I think maybe a couple of days ago, and I just went to see it yesterday, which at the recording of this video is Saturday. Today is Sunday, and so the movie Drop is pretty much about a woman. She goes on a date and she starts getting these airdrops from this app called DigiDrop or whatever. And she's on her first date with this guy who she has been talking to. And in the restaurant, she starts to get these random airdrops from people. And they're memes, but they seem kind of threatening. And while she's on the date, she continuously tries to ignore them. She shows them to her date and he's like, oh, these are just memes, non-threatening. But then they become more sinister. The person eventually sends her a message, and then she finds out that there's actually someone in her house. So there's a person who's airdropping her in her vicinity, because you can only airdrop somebody when they're 50 feet away from you. I don't know how that is in real life, but in this movie it's 50 feet away. And then there's a person that is in her house. Now, she left her house. Her son is still there. He's 8 or 9, and her sister is babysitting her son while she's out on this date. And, she was very reluctant to go on this date, to leave her son by herself at home. And we realized that, one of the reasons being is because, she's apparently a widow and she hasn't really gone on a date since her husband passed away. We eventually find out that her husband was extremely abusive. And although throughout the movie it hints that she was the one who took his life, that is not the case. He actually did that himself after he was threatening her. He was just finished abusing her, and then he pointed the gun at her son, who was a baby at the time. And then eventually he took his own life in that same scene. So we find out that she actually did not do this. Now the airdrops become more sinister throughout the date. They're threatening to take her son's life, take her sister's life, and they actually want her to take the life of her date that is there. We find out that her date is actually is a photographer for the mayor. And throughout the day, this person is constantly telling her to do things like, hey, create some type of distraction, get his SD card from his camera and crush it. Then the person tells her to go to the bathroom, to open the towel dispenser, and there seems like there is a poison in the towel dispenser. And apparently he or she wants her to poison her date. And so we don't exactly know why this is as the movie progresses, but we do know, okay, obviously maybe there's something with this date. So it got me thinking, okay, well, maybe the guy on this date is involved in something sinister, but then the way he speaks, the way he carries himself, the things he does doesn't really seem to be the case. Also, with the excuses she continuously makes, he seems very oblivious to it. However, so it's I don't think at least me as a viewer didn't think that he was in on it, but obviously somebody wants him dead, right? Now, as for the other suspects, there's a bartender. There is a guy who she bumped into when she walked in. And then there is another older man who she speaks to while she's waiting on her date to come, who is supposedly on a blind date. And she interacts with all of these people, right? So now getting into the suspects, right? At first I was like, okay, it's gonna be the guy she bumps into. She drops her phone, that typical that, oh, and then you find out later on that, oh, hey, like he's the one that's been texting her. And so throughout the movie, I think she interacts with him like once or twice or whatever the case is. And, it seems like it could be him because he's constantly on his phone, but that's like way too obvious, right? So it's like, okay, obviously it's not him. There's also the guy who's playing the piano at the place. Now, I immediately didn't think it was him because he's kind of sleazy. He tried to hit on her. But throughout the movie, she does try to like warn him or get help from him to call the police. However, instead what happens to him is he gets poisoned, and this is supposedly because the person who is threatening her also has like recordings near her table, but she wrote the warning to him on a tip, like a $20 bill, told the waiter to go and give it to him. So clearly this person can not only hear her at the table, can not only see what is on her phone, but he can also visually see her, and not just from security cameras. So now we know that this person is probably in view of her table. So this leaves, okay, is it the bartender? I personally would have thought it would have been much cooler if it was the bartender, like she had something to do with it. But it turns out that it is not the bartender. In fact, the bartender comes over to her because she's been acting weird all night, constantly getting up. And she's like, yeah, like I've worked at bars so much and I've seen when women act like this. And usually they act like this because they feel threatened by their date, or maybe they're being abused. And the lady is like, yeah, no, that's not what it is. I'm fine. Right. But she doesn't like even try to like hint at whatever, because of course this person is watching her every move, and he's like, that wasn't a good idea. You shouldn't have done that. So she's caught between a rock and a hard place. She has nothing. She can't do anything about this. However, the bartender does eventually tell her in this same conversation that, yeah, I don't blame this, talking about the guy, the older man that she had an interaction with while she was waiting with her date. She says, I don't blame his blind date for leaving him, because as the movie goes on, we see that his blind date calls him like a sleazeball or something like that and leaves. And she's like, yeah, I don't blame his blind date for leaving him. He's been staring at you the whole time. And that's when it clicks for her that, oh, it's probably him. So she takes 2 shots that she was going to use to poison her date. She takes them over to him. At this point, her date has gotten up to go to the bathroom because she was going to poison him, but then like she didn't want him to drink the glass that she just poisoned. So she like knocks over the wine on him instead to cause like a diversion or whatever. And so when she goes over to him, she approaches him, and what do you know? It's him who has been sending her these airdrops and who has been threatening her this entire time. And so, he's like, oh, I'm always one step ahead, blah, blah, blah. Now you're going to like poison him and this and that. And so her date comes back over, and he's like, he has this look on his face like, what are you doing here? And she eventually, like, she gets him to drink the shot, because the guy is like, if he don't drink this shot, I'm going to have my guy at your house, like, off your family. And so she's like, what am I going to do? So I'm assuming she does it because he's like, my family's more important. And so she gets her date to drink the shot. And then she's like, just go back and sit down. I'll explain everything later. And so now this guy, he calls his guy at the house and he's like, you know, leave them alone. It's fine, whatever. And he's like to her, oh, yeah, you know, it's fine. You know, your son is safe. And he gets this dessert. It's a panna cotta. And he's eating it. And as he's eating it, she's telling him about her abusive husband and everything that, you know, she went through and how, like, he would take her to a nice fancy restaurant all the time and he would always eat dessert. I think she said it was panna cotta. And like she would just watch him as he ate it. You know, it was like every time he abused her, he would take her out and she would just sit there and watch him eat this dessert. And then we find out at some point she reveals that, yeah, like, I actually poisoned your dessert. Like, she doesn't say it like that, right? But she says it in this sly way, you know, movie stuff. And as he looks into his plate, he sees the liquid from the poison in his plate. And as he sees that, it shows us that on the camera, she pretty much just pretended to put the poison in her date's shot. And as he was, this guy, the bad guy, was looking up at her date when he came to the table to find out why she was sitting there, she had taken the poison and poured it into his plate, the bad guy's plate. And so he has eaten this poisoned panna cotta, but he doesn't like that. And so he immediately takes out a gun, right, and aims to shoot her. But her date comes, and in the nick of time, he saves her, but he ends up getting shot. And so this causes chaos. They're in this really high building. It's a thing throughout the movie. And this causes chaos. Everybody starts running around. And then eventually, like, a shot hits the glass behind her. And then, like, he's chasing after her, trying to kill her and stuff. And then he calls the guy at her house and tells her, get the job done, because now he's mad. And so earlier in the movie, her date had given her a hockey puck for her son, for I forget what team, whatever Chicago team, because her son loves hockey. And she makes a joke. She's like, he's gonna love this. He's gonna break all my windows, but thank you so much. He's gonna love this. So she gets that hockey puck out of her purse and she flings it out at the window. And the bad guy's like, haha, that didn't do anything. But we see the glass cracking. And then because they're so high up, when the glass breaks, the wind like immediately carries him out and he falls to his death into like this big thing that was lit up at the bottom of the concrete. And we can only assume he's dead. And however, the wind also takes her out. But thankfully, there's I think it probably was a curtain or a tablecloth or whatever that is literally hanging on an outlet that's on the floor. And as she's falling out, she grabs onto it. And this thing is ripping. But of course, her date, in his pain and agony as he's been shot at the side of his stomach, comes to save her and he pulls her up. And it's not over because the guy is still at her house trying to offer her family. And so she's like, I need your phone. I'm thinking she's going to call 911. She does not call 911. Instead, she like just uses his phone for what? I don't remember what she uses his phone for. But she takes her phone and uses that to watch the guy on the security cameras as she's like running. She takes her date's keys and she's like running to go to his car. She puts the phone up. She's watching the security cameras. She calls her sister multiple times and she doesn't answer. However, her sister finally answers because earlier in the movie, the bad guy had knocked her over the head. I forgot to mention that. But yeah, and so she finally like wakes up after being knocked over the head and she answers the phone just in time for the main character to see her sister, Jen, in the kitchen as the bad guy is behind her about to shoot. And she's like, get down, he's behind you. And so this whole time as she's driving, she does not ever call 911. Not once. She doesn't attempt to call 911. Nothing. She gets to the house. She still doesn't call 911. But she's clickety-clacketing through the house. At this point, her sister and her son are hiding in the room. And she's clickety-clacketing through the house. And she's hiding from this guy. And, I think he shoots at her once. But eventually, like, she gets a knife and she stabs him. And I don't ever understand why these people don't stab dead people in the right place. Like, can we try the head, the private part, the heart? Like, no, we're stabbing people in shoulders and legs. Like, come on. So anyways, of course, that doesn't do anything to him. So he's chasing after her in a similar scene to what the opening scene was, where like she was crawling away from her husband and he was kicking her and beating her. This guy is doing the same thing. And so as he's doing this, like, there's a scene also at the beginning where her son is like drives this truck to her to send her a note in the kitchen. And as she's crawling away from the guy, she sees her son's truck driving to her, and on top of the truck is the guy's gun because he had dropped it a little bit earlier. And she grabs the gun, and before the truck comes, he actually has taken off like his mask because he was wearing a mask the whole time. And they have like this reveal, like they played the whole music, like, when it's about to build up to reveal somebody. And I'm thinking, okay, like, who is this? But he takes off his mask and is nobody important from the movie. And it's just kind of funny because it's like, okay, what was that for? And the movie does have like some sort of like a little bit of comedy going on. So I'm wondering, like, was that on purpose to be funny? Or did they have this guy playing some type of important role before like they made cuts and stuff to the movie? But anyway, I just thought that was a little funny. Anyways, so she takes the gun and she shoots him and he's dead. Hey guys, I forgot to mention a very important part of the movie. Well, not very important, but the whole reason that this person wanted this guy, the date, to be, dead is because he was actually an FBI informant. So he wasn't really a photographer. He was trying to find out, I guess, information about the mayor. It's never clear what. And at the end of the movie, the mayor is actually arrested because, they caught him on whatever he was doing. So that's what this guy actually was. He wasn't actually a photographer. He was an FBI informant. And that's why they wanted him to be, gone. And I'm guessing that the guy that was manipulating the main character in the movie, I'm guessing he was maybe working for the mayor, or I don't know. That's never really clear. So yeah, I guess that's another issue I'd probably have with the movie. Certain things were not exactly clear, but yeah, there you go. And then of course we go to the ending scene where her boyfriend or date and her sister are in the hospital. She visits him in the hospital and everything is all fine and hunky-dory. And that is how the movie ends. So things I liked about this movie, there was a waiter in the movie. I don't know what his name is. I thought he kind of looked a little bit familiar, but I'm not sure. But anyways, he was in the movie. And I know some people might find these type of characters a little cringe or annoying. I thought he was hilarious. He made me laugh like the entire movie. I thought he did a fine job. He was making like the cringiest jokes, but it was good because I felt like that's how his character was supposed to be. So I really thoroughly enjoyed his character and he made it funny. He really did. Also, I thought the acting was pretty good as well. It's not like it was phenomenal, but I did think that the actors and the actresses really did do their job. Yeah, like, I feel like this movie is what it was. I don't think it was like a terrible movie. I don't think it was a great movie. I think it sits somewhere like slightly above the middle, like a 6 probably. I enjoyed the movie. I love movies like this. However, I do wish that, I don't know what it was missing. but I do feel like it was missing something, right? But then it's like, what could you have done? The whole movie, though, I was kind of screaming at her to be like, why is she not turning off her airdrop or her digi drop or whatever it was in the movie? Like, it would have been over at that point. Like, why is she not turning that off? You know what I mean? That thoroughly annoyed me. Like, I don't know like how that works, but like, yeah, like, why didn't she just turn it off? That didn't make any type of sense to me, because it could have just been over by her turning it off. So I don't know. Then again, the guy said her phone was cloned. So that's another thing. But yeah, I don't know. I would have turned off. She didn't even attempt to turn it off. So we don't even know what would have happened if she attempted to turn it off. But yeah. That was really the only thing that bothered me, aside from her not calling 911. But yeah, like, I was satisfied, I guess, with the movie, but I feel like it could have been better. So I don't know. But yeah, for this movie, it was a 6 out of 10 for me. If you watched this movie, tell me what you thought down. Tell me what you thought about it down in the comments. Yeah. So guys, any suggestions for any other thriller movies that you would like me to watch, also put them down in the comments below. Thank you guys so much for watching this video, and I hope you enjoyed it. Make sure that you like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. Bye.